So yeah, and the worst problem is that my wife likes to make a tree so bright that the neighbors can see.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can see it from space.
Ford. It's a whole new thing.
Welcome back to Poutine Politics, Canadian issues served with cheese curds. My name's Adam.
My name's Mike, and this week I went on let's say a mind quest. We'll call it
A mind quest.
a mind quest.
Okay.
Basically, I was confused as to why I liked the Conservative Party, why I was a right-wing idealist. I couldn't figure out why, because every time I look at the Conservative Party in the news or anything basically they're doing, I was beating my head off the wall going, why are you doing what you're doing? Because it didn't make sense to me. The math didn't add up, we'll say. And I finally figured it out. It's because I grew up, when I was a young high school student, we'll call it, the premier in charge was Mike Harris. And
Don't tell the teachers.
yeah.
Well, I guess healthcare too, but anyways, yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to find out, why did I like Mike Harris? And is he the one that framed my point of view? It turns out it was. And that's why I like it. And the reason why I bring this up is because I've been very hard on the Conservative Party lately. In particular, the idiot that we call Doug Ford.
Idiot in chief.
Idiot in chief in
Idiot
command.
in chief of Ontario.
I give politicians some slack. Like, you can make mistakes, you can make errors, but when you continually do the same things over and over again, I'm done with you. Like, we're not having this conversation anymore.
But Mike, when there's enough backlash from the public, they just roll back. They just say, "Oh, we're not going to do that anymore." Of course, they sell the rollback as them doing a good thing.
Yeah.
See, look,
We listened.
and it's like,
Doug Ford.
huh.
So I wanted to do a bit of a comparison between Mike Harris and Doug Ford. Now, Mike Harris was listed in a newspaper article as the #1 premier over the last 30 years.
For Ontario or in general, like across Canada?
Across Canada.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
And with that mind frame, I don't think Doug Ford is going to have that same... the same...
I mean...
And here's the big difference.
Yeah.
I'll say this. Okay, and we're going to start doing some comparisons here, and we'll see how this goes. Mike Harris has been out of politics, since 2002?
Yeah, it was 2002, Yeah, because he resigned, and Ernie Eves became the premier, and then the Liberals won in 2003.
Yeah.
So 2002
Around
sounds right.
Around.
Yeah.
Have you heard from him?
I know his name has come up a time or two about a couple of things, but it hasn't been
Him.
political.
In a sense.
I'm not even talking about like it wasn't even like his name coming up at a news story or something like that. I don't think it was. It's been years. I know that. I do remember seeing his name come up about some sort of like event, right? But it wasn't like a political thing.
Yeah.
It was not a political thing.
So, and the reason why I look at that is because oftentimes you can kind of gauge what kind of a politician a person is based on what they do in their post-politics career. Are they still involved in politics? Bob Ray. Or, did they do what they felt was necessary and then basically retired? And I do frame this like Dalton McGuinty was like that. Mike Harris was like that. I mean, McGuinty, you can point your fingers at certain things, but
yes, destroying files.
The difference in the resignation, okay? McGuinty's, you could argue, was corrupt.
Yes.
To no end. Harris resigned because of Walkerton.
Yes.
For all intents and purposes.
Yes.
Now, if you want to be a proponent of that, you can say, well, Walkerton actually didn't have any less staff than before his cuts.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem could have still happened, even if the cuts didn't exist. Okay, you can make that argument.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
It's a
possibility. And the problem is we'll never know.
You'll never know.
Yeah.
Whereas McGuinty, you can't really... There's not the gray area surrounding that necessarily.
No.
Anyway, so the point is that, you don't hear about Harris, and which is surprising because he should have a lot of clout. He
You
really
would
should,
think.
right? But there's some really big differences. Okay. I'm going to compare Harris to Ford.
This should be interesting.
Shouldn't it? And we're going to play a little bit of a game. We'll see how well this works.
Okay. It's not a quiz again, is it?
Well, one might say.
Okay.
Okay. How much time elapsed between when Ford released his political platform for the Ontario election and when it actually came out?
And when the platform actually came out?
Actually came out.
Did they have one?
No, so it's 0.
Right, that's what I was going to say. I'm like, I think the answer is 0.
Right?
I mean,
Because, there's a lot of people compare Ford to Harris.
yes.
They really do. Which
for
is
whatever reason.
probably because they're conservative. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because they really shouldn't be. How long did Harris have his platform out for?
6 months.
I believe it was a year and a bit. He had it out for a ridiculously long time.
And that was the platform that kind of became the common sense revolution.
Yeah, it was Common Sense Revolution.
Okay.
There's a big difference there. Like, if you looked at the Common Sense Revolution, you knew what was coming.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone knew what Ford was going to do, including Doug Ford.
But Mike, we were going to save 10 cents a liter on gas. We were going to have bucket beer.
Okay.
So anyways, whatever.
So
A
Doug
bucket beer.
So Doug Ford, the premier, before he became premier, what different jobs did he have that would help him in his new premier role?
Drug dealer.
Perfect. He was definitely accused of doing that.
Yes.
Yes.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yes. Well, I mean, he did technically run the family company. He was the president or CEO or whatever.
Whatever he
after
calls
their father passed away.
Yes, he was. From 2009, 2000. Oh, wait. Oh, because he had to say that he was not because he was running in the office, even though he got charged for it. Nope, that's another story for another day.
Yeah, I was going to say, wait, what? Oh, you mean he might possibly still have ties to the family business?
Yep.
What's a blind trust anyways?
That's fine. Yeah, but do you know what Mike Harris did before he was elected?
Honestly, no.
He was always criticized for being a golf. What do they call it? The trainers?
Like a pro?
Yeah, golf pro.
Golf pro at like it was one of the courses or whatever in
his dad owned the business.
Yeah.
So over time he took on different roles, and one of the roles was that he was a golf pro. He also ran the ski lodge, which lost money every year, according to him.
Well, I mean, that sounds like golf courses. So,
but they wanted to get all year round business, and it lost money every year. And then they eventually sold the golf resort and had a ski lodge that didn't make any money, so they had to shut that down. But he basically did everything, including being a golf pro. So I always teased him about being a golf pro. But here's the interesting part: he was also a teacher.
Yes, I remember that.
And he was also on the Nipissing School Board of Trustees.
Right.
And this is important because of what he did when he became in office.
Yes, when he became the Premier of Ontario.
Okay, now let's set the stage. When Doug Ford took over, what was the economy like?
I mean...
Was it in a recession?
No.
Was it in a growth period?
It was... I guess it was in a growth period, but it wasn't... I wouldn't necessarily say that it was
not a boom. I'm not saying a boom.
Right. But it was still in a growth period.
Yes. So the economy was fairly stable.
Yes.
And fairly consistent.
Yes.
What was the economy like when Mike Harris took over?
It was a recession.
It was a recession.
Yes.
A small recession?
No.
A back-to-back recession?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It was bad.
Oh, okay.
It was bad.
It was bad. It was pretty bad. It was pretty bad.
You know, the NDP got elected in 1990 in the middle of a recession, and then they left in 1995 in the middle of a recession.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was pretty bad. Okay.
Ray days.
Your Ray days. The worst idea ever.
Furlough. government employee furlough.
Wow. That was such a... I mean, yeah, I liked it when I was in school. It was great. I got a day off.
Yeah, exactly. It
was great.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
As a kid, I liked it. Bob Ray was great. I think the problem with Bob Ray was the fact that he got elected, and he was like, wait, I got elected?
What? Huh? What do I do now?
He wasn't expecting to get in. That was the problem.
Ed, I need help over here. Someone get me broadband on the phone.
Let's go back to these comparisons, shall we? Oh, here's a question for you. What was the deficit that the Ontario government faced when Doug Ford took over?
Do you mean the initially reported one or the actual one?
Both. I know.
So the initially reported one was 15 billion.
Yep.
Which the PC party tried to say was larger than that. And then when the numbers came in, the actual deficit was closer to 7 billion.
Yes. So we'll say for the sake of argument that we'll give them a little bit of slack and we'll say it's 10 billion.
Sure. In the middle.
How much was the revenue for Ontario last year?
The revenue for Ontario. Oh, man.
Like how much money did Ontario bring in?
I've never looked at these numbers before.
Just take a guess. It doesn't matter.
150 billion.
It's 200 billion.
Okay.
But close,
I was,
but close.
yeah, okay.
So in ratio, how much was the deficit to the revenue generated?
5%.
Right. When
20%.
Harris took office, what was the deficit then?
Oh.
In 1995. Keep in mind that everything's in 1995.
Okay, so the deficit,
Yeah, deficit.
I'm going to say was...
Well, it could be a surplus too. Let's be...
But it wasn't.
It was Ray, but let's
I know.
pretend that it was a surplus,
Well,
possibly. Okay,
no.
sure. Okay, what was the deficit?
I mean, I feel like I want to say that it was smaller, but at the same time, it most likely wasn't. So I'm going to say 12 billion.
12. You were very close. I believe it was 12.5 billion.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
I feel good about myself,
Okay.
but the revenues were smaller.
What was the revenue?
160.
50.
No.
Yes.
Come on.
Yes. 50.
50 billion was the You're trying to tell me that from 1995 to 2018, the revenues in this province have quadrupled.
Yeah.
How many years is that? 23?
Yeah, it's on par.
I guess it's possible. Yeah, okay, fine. All right. Yeah, fair enough.
So what was that ratio like? I actually believe it was
Well,
lower.
what is that? That'd be 25%.
Yeah, it's
12 and a half,
25%.
12 and a half on 50. Yeah, okay. Well, I said 20.
So when people say that Doug Ford had to cut to balance because, Mike Harris did the same thing. First of all, Doug Ford is not balancing the books.
No.
Let's make sure we're clear on that. Mike Harris did balance the books. Now, you can make the argument about whether or not corporate tax rates, and I know that this is, Adam and I will have this discussion at some point about corporate tax rates and trickle-down economics and whether or not that works or not, because a part of the Common Sense revolution was that they did cut corporate rates, and so did Doug Ford. He cut taxes all over the place. But, there's a big difference between when you're faced with a 25% deficit
to revenue, yeah.
day one.
Yeah.
Question for you.
Okay.
The questions don't stop.
Oh, fun.
Okay, so when Doug Ford took office, did the federal government decrease or increase funding to healthcare and education?
Increased.
When Mike Harris took office, did the federal government increase or decrease funding to healthcare and education?
I know. Yes, they decreased. The federal transfers decreased in that time.
Okay. Next question. Since Doug Ford's been in office and he hasn't had a full
It's been
mandate,
a year and a half.
mandate,
Yeah.
has
you're
Doug Ford increased or decreased healthcare?
right. Okay, so the question here is in dollars or in percentage of budget?
Whichever one you want to take.
Okay, cut.
The cut. Okay. So, and it hasn't been a much. And I'll give Doug Ford credit. It hasn't been like a drastic cut.
No.
Education.
So,
Not his funky numbers, real numbers.
What's wrong with the funky? Mike, if you look at the numbers on the financial statements, they can clearly say that the education budget has increased by $1.2 billion over last year.
Yeah, $1.2 billion because you have to pay off teachers and you want to give the other people tax credits. That doesn't count. Okay. Increase or decrease?
But it counts because it's on a piece of paper. This is serious business, all right? Anyways, cut.
Okay. Environment.
Definitely cut.
Okay. When Mike Harris took office, did he cut healthcare?
Well, he couldn't.
You're not wrong.
If the federal government cut health transfers, the province can't cut health care.
So
But technically they did.
they
No?
increased it.
Okay.
You can make this argument, and I've heard this argument from people that are against what Mike Harris did, and they say that the amount of money that they increased based on the increased GDP compared to increase in inflation does not equal the same as amount of healthcare increase.
Right.
Okay, because they went from like 17 billion to 24 billion in
Right.
like the 4 years. But they still increased it. Ford is literally cutting it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? Education. Harris.
I mean, I know by the look on your face that the spending technically was increased. The
Yep.
thing is that all the news stories at the time were talking about how the Harris government, I think, cut over $1 billion from education at the time, and especially around the time of when the teacher strikes happened in 1997, right? The stories at that time was that the funding cut was in excess of $1 billion.
That's because they're cutting the teachers' salaries. Because remember okay, I have to get back. I'll get back to that in a second. Okay, what about the environment? How did Harris do the environment? Cut or increase?
Well, did they not start? Well, maybe not that early. I was going to say, was it not the PC party that started the Green Belt, or was that the Liberals?
I don't know. I don't know who did the Green
Okay,
Belt. But
well,
they cut the environment horribly.
Okay.
It wasn't even close.
Okay,
Like,
fine.
they're like, that's the one we're going to cannibalize. And they did. They did cannibalize it. Now, where they took out cuts, because if I've just said that they did cut corporate taxes, what they did, they increased health care spending, they increased education spending, and somehow got less money from the government, federal government that is, in transfers.
Yeah.
How did they get this accomplished? Well, simply, first thing that Harris did was he went after the unions.
As
big time went on.
as evidenced by things like the school strike.
And this is why when the school strike happened when I was in high school, I didn't go out on the strike, because I was like, you're striking because the teachers want money. Go away. We have a terrible budget.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was just common sense. And I hate saying common sense because it was part of the revolution.
Yes, exactly. The common sense revolution.
But I was like, this is basic math. Okay, so here's another good thing. Okay, when Doug Ford took office, did he increase his wages or did he decrease them or hold them?
Okay, so I read something recently on this.
Oh, did you know?
That technically MPPs, their wages are still frozen. However, because this goes back to the thing about the teacher when we were talking about the teacher strike, when we were talking about the 14% increase, right?
Yeah.
So that increase was not given to MPPs as a whole. I guess there was 31 specific MPPs that received that raise, and it had something to do with not like secretaries or like assistants to the minister or something like that. I can't remember what the specific positions were that received it, but that 14% raise was for those specific 31 MPPs.
Okay.
Again, I don't remember what that subsection of people was called, whether it was the ministers or whatever, but they were given that raise. But then there was the housing allowance increase.
Yeah,
so anyways,
increase.
yes, they increased.
Okay. And Harris
Frozen
for 5 years. And where people have issues with Harris was that, he took on the unions. And one of the more favorite quotes from that party was, there was never a blade of grass that wasn't trampled by some protest at some point in time.
Right.
During his reign. Because he went after workfare and welfare and all that stuff. And something you can get into whether or not workfare was a good idea or not. It's fine. But I'll give Harris credit. And this is why I liked him so much, was that he often would promote an idea, have a good committee, and go, oh, so that's a bad idea. Okay, we'll use that idea. And they would say, well, you backtracked. He's like, yeah, I compromised. Why is this a problem? I never understood that. Like when he compromised, they would go after him. I never understood that. Mm-hmm. To this day, I don't get it. What do you want?
Which really is what good government should be about.
Right? Like you go in with an idea because you want something. So let's say you want to, I don't know, you want to tax cigarettes, okay? You want to increase the tax on cigarettes. But you find out that if you increase the tax on cigarettes too much, people stop buying the cigarettes and they go somewhere else to buy them. After committee, you realize that that's not a good idea. You're only going to cut it up. You're only going to increase the tax by half of what you originally proposed. Mm-hmm. That's compromise.
Right.
That's intelligent governing.
Right.
But that's what they would give him a hard time about because he backtracked on his ideas. No, he compromised on his ideas. He didn't backtrack. He's not like he said one thing and did the complete opposite.
Like what's been happening recently.
Yeah. Okay. So when Doug Ford came into power, how did he deal with trying to reduce cost for different jurisdictions? And trying to be vague a little bit.
I was going to say, you're talking about like municipalities?
Yes,
or?
municipalities.
Yes. So there was the, first there was obviously amending the City of Toronto Act.
Yeah, he specifically targeted one city. And how did Doug Ford go about it?
My way or the highway.
He passed a law,
Yes.
and then the city of Toronto went, that's not legal. And the lawyers, he brought it in front of a judge, and the judge's like, your arguments are crazy. You can't do that. And then Doug Ford said, no.
Notwithstanding clause.
Notwithstanding clause, you can't fight it now. Haha.
Yes.
When Harris took government, he also did something similar, right?
Yeah,
He amalgamated.
exactly.
He amalgamated them all. But
Yeah.
he didn't just amalgamate there. He also amalgamated in his own thing. Like he cut the MPPs down too.
Yeah.
And his cabinet was supposed to be at 25 and he got it down to 18.
Yeah.
And he also said, I'm going to municipalities. The federal government cut 3% from us.
Yeah.
I'm trying to cut as much as I can. I'm asking to cut 3% from you. Let's all come together. We'll all have to cut. We're in a huge recession. I have this massive deficit. Let's all, and everybody was on board.
Mm-hmm.
The exception
More or less.
of
More or
the
less.
exception of the unions.
Yes.
And not because I don't want to target unions. I don't think unions are a bad thing. The unions had to fight for what they're representing. They're representing a body, and Harris is like, you're not getting money. And the union's like, well, our legal right is to get money. So they had it out.
Yeah.
I feel that a lot of the divisiveness that was produced by that is still lingering in politics now, which is unfortunate because it's now misplaced.
Mm-hmm.
Like the conservatives use the same rallying cry that Harris used correctly as it now. Why are you taking on like? Ugh.
Yeah. Yep. It's not. We're not in the same boat in Ontario that we were in 1995.
No,
We're not. We're not in a recession. Is there a possibility of a recession in the next 12 months? Maybe, but nobody can predict these things. Not
No,
really. And other people are like, we need to stop deficits and we got to stop the increase on the debt and things like that. It's like, well, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And I mean, and if you want to say Harris shouldn't have cut taxes to promote economic growth, the good or bad economic theory from the 80s, that was only 10 years in history. So at the time, it probably was the best, most prevailing thought to promote economic growth. So he was doing what he thought was right.
Yeah.
Now,
Whether it's turned out to be right in
30
the grand
years,
scheme of things.
30 years of data helps a lot more than 10 years of data.
Yeah.
Every stage I'm going, yeah, okay, now I see why. And that's why when they went on the strikes and everything like that, I was like, and when the students walked out in the local area through the high schools around here, I was like, yeah, but what are you striking for? You're not striking for classroom cuts because there was no classroom cuts.
No.
It was just the teachers.
Yeah.
Weren't getting what they wanted. Well, sorry, there was kind of a problem with who we elected last time, so everyone's got to bite the bullet in the public sector, right?
Yeah.
You know, it hurt everyone else too. It's just the public sector was safe because they're the public sector and the unions are very powerful organizations. So, yeah. I find it amusing about when you can really compare Harris to Ford about how many things that I'm just like, why, Dougie, why?
It's just not the same. It's just not the same conservative party anymore.
It's
Progressive conservatives. They're still progressive conservatives. They haven't changed their name in the provincial parties.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I had hopes for Jason Kenney, and I don't have so much hopes for Jason Kenney anymore. I really did.
I don't think you should have. I don't think you should have.
Listen, I like to believe people are good until they prove me wrong repeatedly.
Fool me once, shame on you.
Well, no, it's like
Fool me 6 times, shame on me.
And then the 7th time you're out. The more I find out about Kenny, I just like, oh, Kenny, oh, what are you doing?
So now that we've pivoted a bit, we're talking about the conservative race to the bottom, as it were, between Ontario and Alberta, because this is current news. Yeah, so the War Room came public relatively recently and calls themselves the Canadian Energy Centre, and they had this logo, which is like a light blue circle with these little like chevron shaped things that are white. Okay. So this logo was made by a company called Lead and Anchor, which mysteriously came out of the ether on April 1st. of 2019 with their website launching.
On April 1st.
Literally like 3 weeks before the election. Maybe, or was it even less than that? 3 weeks, like within 3 weeks of the Alberta election. So one of the things that they've done, or that they did apparently, is they made this logo for the Canadian Energy Centre. Except they basically took a company's pre-existing logo. I want to say the company is called like Sitefinity or something like that, which same circle, same chevrons, but their circle is like kind of multiple shades of blue and the chevrons are green.
Oh.
Otherwise, it's the exact same logo.
Foreign funds.
Yes. Got to go after those foreign funds. For $30 million, we have to go after those foreign funds. Anyways, I know that this was Harris v. Ford, but when we started talking about the race to the bottom, I figured, well, we might as well go all the way on the race to the bottom.
Race to the bottom. Ford's still way in front. Come on,
Well,
it's not even close.
He's been the premier for a year and a half. Kenny's had 8 months.
He still hasn't done as bad.
Okay, I guess.
Like, there's a lot of things Kenny has to mess up before he'll catch up to Ford. He hasn't screwed with the unions yet. Patience.
When you run on
no platform.
When part of your platform in Alberta is about the fact that the NDP is running deficits upon deficits upon deficits, and then when you release your first budget after being elected, you run a deficit that's larger than the last deficit that the previous government ran on or released. Maybe your campaign shouldn't have been about deficits. That's among other things.
I don't. This is the part that drives me nuts about conservatism right now, is the fact that they consistently run deficits. I guess my problem is that I want to be fiscally responsible.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people do. That's the part of the Conservative Party that I think a lot of people like or liked when they were fiscally conservative. They're not fiscally conservative anymore.
I know. I don't know when this happened. And
I
and look at Harris. He increased healthcare and education when everyone else was cutting it.
Yeah. I can tell you when it happened.
And no one cared.
I can tell
Which
you when it
pissed me
happened.
off even more.
So it started at the federal party. Like I think there's certain progressive conservative parties, like provincial parties, that are probably still somewhat similar to the old progressive conservative.
Yeah.
But this started with the federal party. This started with the merger of the Reform and the PCs.
Which makes no sense.
Well, except for the fact that...
Who was the one that run deficits in those two parties?
I mean, when under Harper, they ran those pretty serious deficits. Now, again, we went through the biggest recession since the Great Depression.
I have no problems in a recession, a government spending money.
Yes.
That's the time to spend it.
Exactly, absolutely. And I agree with that. And that's not the problem. That's not the problem that I have. But it is this belief structure that the Conservatives kind of converted to because of the fact that at the time the merger happened, the Canadian Alliance, but whatever, the Reform Party was the stronger of the two. And since that time, there's people that were involved in that party that have branched out. Jason Kenney was a part of the federal government under the Conservatives, under Stephen Harper. Now he's the premier of Alberta. What kind of politics, especially from a financial perspective, is he going to bring to Alberta? Probably the same kind of financial perspective that they had as a federal government. I feel like a lot of the issues that we have with any of the current conservative provincial parties that are in power when it comes to financial things and is saying that they're not fiscally conservative anymore is because fiscal conservatism changed while Harper was prime minister.
Yeah, a lot of things changed when Harper was prime minister.
And I'm not saying that it's all his fault, but conservatism in Canada as a whole changed.
Yeah.
And mind you, I think conservatism around the world has changed similarly, but Canada has a very specific brand of conservatism, and it certainly changed. And because people in the party at that time now are in different places in different governments around the country, we're seeing it spread.
Yeah, I guess it's still progressive. I guess that's the problem. I'm still a progressive conservative
right,
as opposed to just being a conservative.
Right, exactly.
And it's just mind-boggling.
It's fiscal conservatism, but social responsibility.
Yeah, it's not hard to do.
Right.
It's not even hard to do. Cutting taxes, I can understand the logic behind cutting taxes.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting to actually crunch the numbers one of these days. Like I said, I'll do it
Yeah.
because I'm a nerd.
It's going to take 50 more spreadsheets.
God,
Probably
I
more.
don't know.
I don't know.
I don't even want to know what that takes. God. And and that's the big thing. Like Harris versus Ford, it's not close. Like when Harris did something, he did it. There was a rationale behind what he was doing. So he wasn't cutting education for the sake of cutting education. He didn't cut education. He cut teacher salaries, basically. He said, no, you're not getting more money.
Yeah.
I'm not getting more money. I'm cutting everything. You got to cut too. Feds cut. We cut. Municipals cut. Everyone's got to cut.
Yeah.
Sorry.
One thing, well, and again, maybe you could argue that it was a fiscal conservative thing to do. I would argue that it wasn't, but it's one of those things that governments do all the time, and that's the sale of, crown assets, as it were. So the 407.
But that wasn't Harris.
Yes, it was.
Was it Harris?
That was Harris. Selling the 407 was, 99-year leasing the 407 was a bad idea.
Whatever. Yeah, no.
Was a bad
And Harris made mistakes. Harris made mistakes. Oh, that's right. Yeah, 407. 407 was a mistake. The spring bear hunt was a mistake.
Oh, right. Yeah.
When he slashed the nurses, a mistake.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff, if you actually if you were to get him talking, you would find out that he agreed with you.
Right.
But there's a difference. But that's the big difference. He's not saying he's right all the time. Unlike Ford,
Yes.
who can never be wrong, even though you pointed out to him right in front of his face.
Right.
Like his approach to things. Oh, we're just going to let people go away through attrition. That doesn't work.
No.
And it doesn't work because you've already done it once.
Yeah, exactly.
And you failed miserably the first time. Why is it going to be any different this time around?
Yeah. It's different because when it failed the first time, he wasn't technically the one running it. His brother was. Now he's running it. It's going to work.
Because he's got a bigger golden handshake.
That's right.
Harris literally created Ford.
Yeah? You think so? Because of the mega city?
Yeah. He created the
because
mega
because the amalgamation of Toronto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then Rob Ford wouldn't have existed the way he did.
No, without the mega city, at most he would have been the mayor of Etobicoke.
Yeah.
Right? Which would have been a lot more small scale.
Yeah.
So.
No one would have cared.
All right. That's Harris v. Ford
Yeah.
et al.
It's not even close.
It's not even close.
It's just so bad.
So what you're saying is we need another common sense revolution?
No, we don't.
I guess you're right. Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, that's just so things are better now. Right?
No, Ford. I'll take the 95 economics over Ford.
Yeah, I know. I figured I just had to. I had to. I knew what your response would be. I knew it would be funny. So that's all right.
Ford. So many better options. Why did they elect? Oh, wait, I forgot. That's because he cheated in his nominations.
Yeah. Whatever. I mean, what's a little cheating now and then amongst conservatives? I know what we're going to do. We're going to add a whole bunch of names to the voting rolls. How about IP Freely?
Was your name Dan? What's your middle name? Saul. What's your last name? Knight. Yeah. Harris good, Ford bad.
That's the end. Fight us on it. Anyways. Thanks for listening. My name's Adam.
My name's Mike.
We'll talk to you soon.
Help make Ontario great again. Join the Common Sense Revolution.